instance, and the teacher said, I find that to be bad, even though that's objective, they would still consider that to be a subjective thing that he's trying to instill in the kids as part of a point of view, or maybe even indoctrination. So I would imagine he didn't do very much as far as teaching these kids anything beyond what we would expect or should be taught in history, but that's where we are. That's where they are in Florida.
It's so ironic, dear brother, because the very notion of, let's say, a PhD, a doctoral dissertation, is the idea of opinion, because that last chapter is a conclusion chapter. That conclusion chapter is based on your research, your meta-analysis of the data, and your grounded framework of comparative or comparing that qualitative or quantitative dynamic. You conclude based on opinion, all right? Informed opinion, but it is in fact your opinion based on data. Okay, I got a question for you. What in the red state hell?
You can take a gun, shoot somebody in the face. It's not hard. Sometimes it might even be fun if they're a godless commie.
Now, what they're trying to do is sneak the COVID vaccine in your salads.
I hate math. Somebody say amen.
Sammy, sir!
I'll talking at you like an adult.
No, you're not. You are not. You're talking like I'm a goddamn child. I'm 25 and I'll beat you.
I never said you was a child. Never tried to
I did 40s and chain. I'm from the east side.
Okay, that's good for you. If you, if that's what... No.
Whoa, East Side, OG, triple OG, calm down. Calm down, all right? Just calm down, OG. There's more.
No, we're not doing that tonight.
All I can say is if you
He just made it show you was okay. He just made it show you was okay.
I'll say right now, I quit. Have fun staying alive. Because of your dumb ass mouth.
all I said was if you need to
No, you say go sit down. You
No, I did not say
no,
go.
you did not. With it. There's a camera right here that heard it.
all I said was if you cannot stand up, then you can just...
If you want to talk that, because guess what? I'm joking. The cameras heard that too. I understand how the I heard you go do this. Same to the goddamn speaker yesterday morning, bro. Same goddamn.
Yesterday morning.
Well, the morning before that, bro. I don't know. I work goddamn 7 days a week. It all runs together.
I just asked you to turn it down. I was making sure
No,
you heard me.
No, you didn't ask me. You told me, and
If I was at...
I'm calling Susan and HR, sir. You're creating a hostile work environment for me. All right, put the pictures up full mass here. Somebody told me that actually that's him in the future on the other side. Jeff, there's some videos speak for themselves. What are your thoughts, man?
So it's like a Terminator thing where him from the future sends himself back, but apparently on the east side they confront themselves and then periodically flip their hair back. The east side actually doesn't sound like that bad of a place, really. It's
Right.
Based off his behavior. It sounds like a vacation, but what do I know? Yeah, wow, that was a great way to end the show. So
There you go.
Lets me know that I should stay away from the east side for the time being.
That's right. Well, at least his east side. All right, dear brother, tell people how they can follow you, check out your great work.
Yeah, you can check me out on Rebel HQ, a part of TYT, every day of the week. And I also have a YouTube channel called We're Gonna Be All Right.
Always a pleasure, dear brother. Thank you, my friend. All right, remember, take care of yourself, take care of each other, take care of the planet. Remember, the truth is always indisputable.
Hello and welcome to the show. This is Unbossed and I am Nina Turner. And in the co-chair, Jackson, I'm on it again. In the co-host chair, it is none other than Jackson White. Jackson is a Rebel HQ contributor. Jackson, it is so good to see you here with us on Unbossed today, per usual.
Per usual, it's always a beautiful Wednesday. Any day I'm on here, even if we change up the schedule, it's always gonna be a good time. But yeah, I'm doing well. I'm feeling pretty good. I'm ready to get rolling. It's a beautiful day up here in New Jersey, and things could always be worse. So that's a good place to be.
It is a great place to be. There's always somebody that would love to trade places with us. So I love that spirit that you have today. And speaking of today, Jackson and I are gonna be covering some pretty heavy stuff today. Someone called 911. America's being robbed. 911, what's your emergency? I'm being robbed. America's being robbed. A Minnesota Republican state believes child hunger can exist because child obesity exists. Yep, that genius said that. And later in the show, we'll highlight how one prison is looking to change the prison process. And don't forget to subscribe. If this is your first time tuning into Unbossed, welcome. We are so glad you are here. If you are a regular viewer, don't keep all this goodness to yourself. Go ahead and text somebody, call some baby, message in the bottle, smoke signal, let them know one of the best hours of their day is happening right now. Will you do that for us? We would love it if you would do that. So we're going straight to America. We have an emergency. 911, what's your emergency? We're being robbed. Watch this. Under our system, profit-hungry health insurance companies run the negotiations, keeping prices high and lining the pockets of middlemen, middlewomen, and pharmaceutical bigwigs while millions of workaday Americans literally struggle to stay alive. Millions of workaday Americans are struggling to just barely get by. And we're seeing another gross example of that playing out right now. Check out this headline. Appalling, Biden administration declines to force Big Pharma to cut price of prostate cancer drug. This reporting is coming from Common Dreams. Thank you, Brett. Yeah, you are reading that headline correctly. If you are watching, if you are only listening, that's exactly what I said. The Biden administration declines to force Big Pharma to cut price of prostate cancer drugs. Now, patient advocates on Tuesday blasted, as well they should, the Biden administration's refusal to compel the manufacturer of a life-saving prostate cancer drug developed completely. Do you hear me? Underline, bolded, underscore, message in the bottle on the train. With public funds, the lure is nearly $190,000 annual price tag. You heard me right. And if you're watching it, your eyes are not deceiving you. $190,000 annual price tag on this drug. The drug was developed, hear us clearly, completely with public funding. But let me remind Biden of his own words.
Lowering the cost of prescription drugs is important, and giving families like yours just a little bit more breathing room makes a gigantic difference. Today, 1 in 4 Americans who take prescription drugs struggle to afford them. Nearly 30% of these patients have skipped doses of essential drugs that they have to take. But after decades of trying to take on Big Pharma, we finally won.
I mean, does he believe anything that he was reading out of that teleprompter? Because make no doubt about it, he was reading it out of the teleprompter. It certainly was not in his heart. Now, all of the facts that he stated about people suffering in this country because they don't have the capacity due to cost to get life-saving drugs that will either save their lives or enhance their lives. But this dude, because that's what he is right now, President Dude, has decided that he is not going to follow through on yet another campaign promise. So in case you need a reminder, that last part was after passing of the Inflation Reduction Act. What he said remains to be true, that far too many Americans are suffering from being uninsured or underinsured, and they cannot afford their prescription drugs. Moreover, drugs that are researched and brought to market off of the taxpayer's dime ought to not cost anything. This is what we get for commodifying healthcare. And that is why this segment is 911. What's your emergency? The American people are being robbed. But this current mayhem all pertains to a drug called Xtandi, sold by Pfizer and Japan's pharmaceutical giant Testila. In 2021, prostate cancer patient Eric Sawyer petitioned US Health and Human Services Secretary Xavier oh Lord, I'm messing up the man's last name, Xavier Becerra, to giant march in rights under which the government can grant patient licenses to companies other than a drugs manufacturer. The drugs development was 100% tax funded, yet a 1-year supply of Xtandi currently costs $189,800 in the United States, or up to 5 times more than its price in other countries. Now, National Institutes of Health, part of the Department of Health and Human Services, refuse, and I mean that, refuse to do anything to help reduce the cost of the drug. And this is what they had to say. They does not believe that use of the march in authority would be an effective means of lowering the price of the drug. Then what in the hell do y'all believe is the effective way? I mean, that's the next question we, the American people, should ask. So what are you saying? Just gonna throw up your hands and absolutely do nothing and allow millions of Americans to continue to suffer under the weight and the greed of the pharmaceutical industry? I don't understand. Maybe some of you understand. So please, in your comments to the show, let us know how you feeling about this. HHS and the Department of Commerce announced that they would create an integrity working group to review March in authority. Are they out of their minds? We don't need a study group to see this price gouging and this sin and the shame, because this goes on the sin and the shame list. So Jackson, I, for one, don't understand why they wouldn't step in and use their authority, especially because this drug was paid for by the taxpayers completely.
Well, this is just an example of how the Biden administration has dropped the ball multiple times where he had an opportunity for very easy wins. The railway situation, back in the railway workers' request for more time paid off, more sick days. That was a very easy layup that would have helped his campaign and also really helped out the Democrats. This situation, I mean, $190,000 a year price tag, even if you make, let's say you're bringing in a couple $1 million a year, that's still a lot of money. You know, because like even if you're a millionaire, your money's not just sitting around doing nothing necessarily. Maybe some of it is, but it's probably in assets. Like that's really not affordable for anybody unless you're like a serious, hefty millionaire. It's just totally unaffordable. And then the 5-time markup price rate is just completely arbitrary, and they're doing it because they can. So, right. You know, Biden's signature accomplishment, the student loan debt, that may not happen. So other than that, him freeing nonviolent marijuana prisoners is kind of all he has to ride on. But keep in mind, the Trump administration is absolutely, well, the Trump campaign is going to focus in on this pharmaceutical argument, even though Trump fell short of that too. He campaigned on it last time.
Yeah, he definitely fell short. There was so much he could do with all that bravado, as we were talking about before the show started. It would be nice if Trump had used that for the good, but he decided not to. And in the case of what is happening with this administration, it makes no sense whatsoever. They say one thing and they're absolutely doing another. America, you need to pay attention to this. Now, Secretary Becerra said, March in authority is a powerful tool designed to ensure that the benefits of the American taxpayers' investment in research and development are reasonably accessible to the public. We look forward to updates from the Biden Integrity Working Group, and at my direction, HHS will review the findings, engage the public, and better define how HHS could effectively utilize our authority moving forward. Let me just dress this up for you, America. That's hogwash. It's a bunch of BS. It's a bunch of stalling. It's a bunch of double talk. It's a bunch of we ain't gonna do a daggone thing here. We're not gonna do anything, and we're gonna let this pharmaceutical company get away with not only gouging the American people, but certainly some people are gonna die because they won't have access to this medicine. That's what this is. Now, Robert Weissman, the president of Public Citizen, tweeted this in response. This is pathetic. You know that's right, Weissman. The Biden administration today had the opportunity to use its existing authority to take the most meaningful action in memory to lower drug prices. It refused. Instead, it has launched a review of that authority. It's BS, America. Look, this is what we got to understand. These politicians say one thing when they run for office, and most of them, far too many of them, do a whole different when they get in office. We're not talking about somebody that doesn't have the authority. The administration has the authority, y'all, and they are refusing to act. You hear that? Refusing to act. And that should cause the hairs on the back of all of our necks to stand up. This is truly unacceptable. Totally unacceptable. So, other countries, why is it? Why is it? Because this definitely fits in the sin and shame category. Y'all know I got a category going. Santa Claus had who's been naughty, who's been nice. I got the sin and the shame category. So feel free to send us some messages about who else should be in that category. Why is it that other countries can do this so much better? We are the hegemon nation, but yet we are being outdone by other countries when it comes to healthcare and also access to pharmaceuticals for our people. As a nation, we don't only have to reimagine the healthcare space, we must demand with our words and with our deeds a new social contract in the United States of America. The current course our country is on is not tenable. It is untenable financially, and it is immoral. Now let's revisit our explainer video to remind this government how it should be done when it comes to negotiating costs for life-saving drugs. In other countries, the government buys prescription drugs wholesale. They say, if Big Pharma wants to do any business in our borders, they have to meet our price. And as you can see, it works. But here in America, not only do we not do that, it's illegal. The only government-run program that's been able to negotiate drug prices is the Veterans Administration, nobody else. In 2003, when passing a drug program for seniors called Medicare Part D, lobbyists paid millions to get Congress to ban government-led negotiations for life-saving medications. And wouldn't you know it, in that program, seniors pay double what veterans pay. And it's worse for everybody else. And not only are we being robbed financially, we're being robbed of our quality of life. Watch this. Americans have a private healthcare system. Every other industrialized nation allows the government to get involved. As a result, Americans pay twice as much for healthcare that's per person, and we die sooner. Does that sound like it works to you? No, it doesn't sound like it works because it doesn't work. But it doesn't have to be this way. Medicare for all could be just a start to how we make some crooked paths in this country straight. Medicare for all, let me remind you, provide everyone in America with comprehensive healthcare coverage, free at the point of service, no networks, no premiums, no deductibles, no copays, no surprise bills. No one in America pays over $200 a year for the medicine they need by capping what Americans pay for prescription drugs. That is what we are supposed to be doing. Elected officials need to stop being cowards when it comes to dealing with Big Pharma. Or in other words, stop letting the owner donors control them. Either bring the hammer down on these companies when they jack up the prices or change the system entirely, focusing on the well-being of the people, not the well-being of their own pockets lined by lobbying efforts of these companies. Jackson, this is an absolute disgrace.
And there's really no effective argument that makes sense to uphold this type of system. It reminds me of the arguments for, if we raise the taxes on corporations or significantly alter our tax system so that the wealthy people have to contribute more with capital, well then the rich, they'll just leave. All the job makers, they'll just leave the country. First of all, a lot of them won't, and the ones that do, okay, let them go. You know what I'm saying? Like, what we need them for? Like, let them go try to do their thing elsewhere. It's not going to go that smooth. And then the fact that it's illegal for the federal government to negotiate these prices with pharmaceutical companies, the reason that's the case is because if that were not the case, they would be forced to sell their products for cheaper because they still got to make money. I mean, they're still going to take advantage of the American market. So It's all just a bunch of nonsense that really can't be defended.
And Jackson, they do it in other countries. The same pharmaceuticals. It's the same drugs. So what is the problem? The problem is these politicians, they made the rules and the rules are skewed towards their owner donors. This is just it. This is the bottom line, America. These people are owned lock, stock, and barrel. So we need to get out there and make a demand and make sure that there's some consequences for these politicians, because no matter what age you are, no matter what generation you are, everybody needs some medicine at some point in their lives. This is immoral as hell. All right, so we're gonna keep pushing on this. But yeah, this man, he made some promises, he ain't keeping them. All right, duly noted, he not keeping them. You know what? There can't be any child hunger in the world because there's childhood obesity. This is what one of the geniuses, just a couple of weeks, Representative Steve Dorosky said this.
I have yet to meet a person in Minnesota that is hungry. Yet today. I have yet to meet a person in Minnesota that says they don't have access to enough food to eat. Now, I should say that hunger is a relative term, Mr. President. You know, I had a cereal bar for breakfast. I guess I'm hungry now. That to some might be maybe that's the definition of the bill. I don't know. I didn't see a definition of hunger in the bill, Mr. President.
This damn genius right here. I mean, really, Minnesota. Seriously, that was Minnesota Republican State Senator Steve Dorosky saying he has yet to meet a person in Minnesota that is hungry. He need to get out more. Guess he doesn't get out much. Put up his smug shot. We just saw him in the video, but I want you to see this. Look at this man right here. Right here, that man right there. In Minnesota, y'all gave this man some power. Lord have mercy on all our souls. But Rep. Dorosky is wrong because the people of his home district are in fact hungry. Let's put up these facts. At least a dozen food pantries are feeding record numbers in Dorosky's home district. The Lake City food shelf had 8 families come in during just the first half an hour on Thursday. It often sees between 20 and 30 families in a day, more than 100 in a week. That number is up considerably in recent years. You know why? Because of the damn pandemic exacerbated the suffering that people were already facing. This man right here, he shouldn't even be in the Senate because he hadn't met anybody. That means he's not talking to his constituents or getting out in the state. Now, statewide, there were a record 5.5 million visits to food pantries in his state. Now, how do we know that on Boston? This genius doesn't know it. Last year, up from 1.9 million in 2021. Did y'all hear me? 5.5 million. And that's up from 1.9 million in 2021. The backlash was bad enough to the rep's comments that he decided to use it as a fundraising moment like all of these grifters do. Here's what he sent out to his supporters, the nerve. The media is at it again. I dare challenge the far left Democrats about the food fraud happening in Minnesota. What did they do? Use their partners in the media to slam me. Can you help me fight back? Liberal media can't handle the truth about our free food program. But of course, he doubled down on this nonsense. Take a look.
I don't know. I know there's a big desire to have government be the center of people's universe and even feed them. Next, of course, we're going to probably want to clothe them and give them cars. Oh, we're already doing some of that. But how can kids be malnourished and record obesity at the same time? I don't get it, Madam Chair. Something isn't ringing true here.
Yeah, he doesn't get it because he doesn't want to get it. There's something called food insecurity, but this genius wouldn't know that if it slapped him upside the head. Next thing you know, we're gonna want government to feed people. You damn right we do, because we have people who are poor in this country and they deserve some help from their government. You're not saying all that when your state bail out these big corporations, sir. Were you writing to the Congress telling them to stop giving away corporate welfare, sir? I doubt it. But when it comes to helping children and helping their families, you got something to say? There's no correlation between childhood obesity, sir, and children being unable to eat on a regular basis, genius. And since you are a state senator, I'm sure that you can call on some of the top doctors in your state, some of the top pediatricians who can help to educate you, genius. Jackson, we're gonna give him the Genius of the Year award.
We got to. I think we definitely should, and plaster it everywhere. But one thing that always kills me is why people who view government and society this way even want to be a part of the government. Like, why are you even in office? Like, literally, like, what are you doing? And then on top of that, the idea that because maybe there's a higher percentage of obesity in America, that is a true fact, but what about everyone else? You know what I'm saying? Like, that little small percentage in the pool doesn't, vacate the rest of everything that's in the pool. But this guy knows that hungry people exist. He just doesn't care. And in his mind, the people who are hungry, they're either black or brown, or if you're white and you're hungry, you really must have messed up. I mean, because come on, this is America. You feel me? Like, so that's not what it should be. But outside of that, another thing that kills me is people who are always talking about the liberal media. Because you stood up for something so grand and so holy, not feeding children. That's the hill you want to die on. But it's like they're always calling everyone else snowflakes, but they're the ones who can't handle being attacked or can't handle criticism. Like, if you're going to be in the public eye, people are going to criticize you. Some of the criticism is legitimate. A lot of it's going to be stupid. Like, people criticize me all the time, and I'm not even like widely well known. But people go like, oh, look how he looks and how he talks and stuff like that. You know what I'm saying? So he's just riding off the coattails of media hype, and he's really just a dumb loser. But people voted him in office, so he has power.
Yeah, they did. What does that say about them, Jackson? This is really a shame. And I wonder if his constituents truly knew that this man was standing up, railing against feeding children, if they would think that that was okay. I would like to think that they would not think that that was okay. Oh, we're going to keep on pushing here, you guys. I want you to watch this.
This is a minimum security prison in Norway called Bolstøy, where Dardan is serving a 1-year sentence for drug trafficking.
I have my washing machine, my dryer, and I have my shower. Brand new. Boom.
In Norway, prisoners have keys to their own bedrooms, fully furnished living rooms and kitchens with sharp knives to cook with. There's 5-star cooking classes, painting, and they even have a fully equipped recording studio. How do you think Americans will react when they see this prison?
They're going to think we're crazy here in Norway.
Why?
You guys have another view on prison. You're like really punishing these people. It's like they're animals.
And Dardan is right about that. Our prison system does treat people like they are animals, less than. But now San Quentin Prison in California, one of the most notorious in the country, might change that. Take a look at this headline. California to transform infamous San Quentin Prison with Scandinavian ideas, rehab focus. By 2025, California's first and most infamous penitentiary will become something entirely different. The largest center of rehabilitation, education, and training in the California prison system and maybe the nation. No longer will it be a maximum security facility. Instead, it will be a place for turning out good neighbors, incorporating Scandinavian methods. The vision for a new San Quentin includes job training for careers that can pay 6 figures, trades such as plumbers, electricians, or truck drivers, and using the complex as a last stop of incarceration before release. Tucked in the proposed budget Newsom released weeks ago is $20 million to jumpstart the effort. And let me remind folks, most people who go to prison actually come back into their communities. When I served in the Ohio Senate, I was on the Judiciary Committee. And at my time there, we did do some things to kind of transform. Now, we could have went a little further, but we did do some things. For example, not allowing ex-offenders to be able to work certain jobs. It really, when you do that, when you have, we called them, they were collateral sanctions. When you have collateral sanctions like that, you really doom that person to not really being able to live their life after they paid their debt to society. You put up more barriers and you in turn increase the recidivism rate. We pay more to house people in prison all over this country. Certainly Ohio is one example of that, than we do to educate our children. Something is absolutely wrong with that. And I am so glad to see that in California, San Quentin of all places, there will be some reforms. Now, other states have experimented with this concept. The Scandinavian philosophy of incarceration has already been implemented in pilot programs in Oregon and ultra-red North Dakota, as well as in small-scale experiments inside a few other California prisons. The Scandinavian model, Americans, does make sense. It makes a whole lot of sense. The Scandinavian model looks at the loss of liberty and separation from community as the punishment. During that separation, life should be as normal as possible so that people can learn to make better choices without being preoccupied by fear and violence. When you compare that philosophy with what is happening in places like Rikers Island, yeah, let's take a look at this headline. Never before seen images show Rikers inmates locked in cages, in cage showers, left in soiled pants, more poor conditions. And Sam Lewis, executive director of the Anti-Recidivism Coalition, an advocacy group working to end mass incarceration, spoke to this contrast, saying, the prisons that we have in America were not meant to transform people into the best version of themselves. They were built to house and welfare people. The Scandinavian model is helping people become the best version of themselves. As we bring people home, if we give them real opportunities to make a decent living, think of how we are breaking the cycle. Jackson, I mean, that is what it's supposed to be. It's called rehab is in the title of the prison system itself, but we're not doing a whole lot of rehab, and what we're doing is making people extra solid criminals.
And throwing everybody into the same group. You know, the way our prison system is set up, it's as if everybody is like completely irredeemable and of extreme danger to society, which there are definitely people who are extremely dangerous, but those are few and far in between compared to people who may just commit crimes for just petty crimes. Maybe they're poor at the moment, they're going through something, maybe they're children, maybe they're young, or they're caught up in selling this or selling that, maybe even scamming people. Oftentimes, these crimes aren't a result of people getting physically hurt, especially if it's like drug dealing and things along those lines, which can get a little shady, but we treat everybody the same. So there's just too much nuance involved in criminality and economics and just the socio-economic fabric of the country and how people behave to treat everyone the same, when at the end of the day, we know that our prison laws are what they are due to racial agendas and just power agendas against the middle and lower classes.
Definitely. Our prison system is one of the strongest examples that we have in this country of race and class. What it looks like when a system is designed to barrel down on people because of their race, ethnicity, and or class. And what Sam Lewis had to say, the executive director of the Anti-Recidivism Coalition, the data that he laid out there, data backs up what he had to say. Take a look at this chart dealing with the lengths of stay and recidivism rate in Norway. Just look at that. 60% of the sentences are less than 3 months. 90% of the sentences are less than a year long. 25% the recidivism rate after 5 years. And that information is coming from First Step Alliance. But meanwhile, in the United States, recidivism rates in the US are some of the highest in the world, with almost 44% of criminals released returning to prison within their first year out. Thank you, wise voter, for that. So you want to compare what they're doing in Scandinavia to what's happening in the United States of America. It is definitely like night and day. And the reality of the matter is that the prison industrial complex profits off of the misery of other people. They poverty pimps, that's what they are. They profit off of other people's misery. And I don't believe, and there are a whole bunch of other folks, both elected people and people in the activist world, certainly do not believe that institutions like this should be able to make a profit off of other people's misery. There should be no such thing as private prisons. And this doesn't even account for the wrongfully convicted, which we know that happens to people, unfortunately. We've covered some of that on this show time and time again, who are subjected to the horrendous treatment in the United States prison system. And if you want to focus on preventing a swell in prison population, it starts with an empathetic approach, prioritizing rehabilitation, especially for non-violent offenders. And as Jackson laid out, one size does not fit all. Let's deal with the people who really need to be there, because yeah, let's face it, human nature can be extraordinarily good and human nature can be extraordinarily bad. Some people do cause bodily harm and death to others. There are some people who should absolutely be in prison, but there are others who should not be there. And we should find a way to make sure that those folks who have paid their debt to society do so in a way that is productive and in a way that allows them to be, as they said, the best version of themselves when they return home. And they are returning home. Good on you, San Quentin. We will keep you updated on this story. Now we're on our way. We're leaving California and we're going over to Arizona. A neighborhood in Tucson, Arizona is looking to bring food to its residents. How you like that? That idiot senator in Minnesota. That town is Dunbar Springs, a neighborhood unlike any other. The urban food forest, which began almost 30 years ago, provides food for residents and roughage for livestock. And the tree canopy also provides relief to residents in the third fastest warming city in the nation. It has made Dunbar Springs a model for other areas grappling with increased heat, drought, and food insecurity caused by the climate crisis, for those of us that believe there is a crisis. Let's put up some photographs here to show before and after. And oh my God, do you see that? In the before photo, very sparse trees, and then the after, look at that. And we know that trees emit that oxygen that we need. They make the air beautiful and they decrease heat. Almost 30 years later, neighborhood foresters have planted more than 1,700 trees and thousands more plants, understory plants, transforming Dunbar Springs into an urban food forest fed by rainwater. Thank the Guardian for this report. This evolved into a simple water harvesting, what Lancaster calls planting the rain, by using gravity and curb cuts to direct water from paved surfaces into planted street side basins that capture water. It is indeed a community effort. 7 priorities of the Dunbar Spring neighborhood foresters: enhancing the public commons, build community, planting a native tree, select native plants with multiple uses and benefits, plant the rain and fertility before you plant the plant. Leaves are called leaves because we are supposed to leave them. Hello, somebody. And enhance public access to and through the growing neighborhood forest. This is our good news for today, Jackson. I am just really thrilled about what they are doing in Dunbar.
Absolutely, and this is a great example of the power of community and local politics and things like that. Successes from local examples is what leads to statewide policies and federal policies to be able to point to real data and show how things worked, what did and what didn't work. And again, it's why people should not just be involved in the voting process in their communities, but run for city council, run for those positions. Because the more people that we have that are like-minded in local positions, that's how we'll be able to grow our movement further and further up to the federal level.
There it is, and really do something to change communities. And I'm glad that Jackson brought that up. Oftentimes we get seduced by the shiny object, which is the federal government, but it is not the only level of government. We should definitely stay in tune to what is happening on the state, regional, and local levels of government. We can indeed be that change and make that change. We will be right back after this.
Hey everyone, Mateo Scarapore here, author of Black Buck, which is Shop TYT's first fiction book ever. I'm honored. So, Black Buck is about a young man named Darren who's living in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn. He lives with his mom, he has his girlfriend, he has his best friend, he has his neighborhood, and his neighborhood has him. Darren's also working at a Starbucks in Midtown Manhattan. And one day, this man, real suave and good looking, comes in and asks Darren to give him his regular. But for some reason, Darren says no. This man named Rhett Daniels, who's the CEO of a startup called Someone, located on the 36th floor of the same building, is impressed. And he invites Darren upstairs, and then he extends an offer to join his elite sales team. Darren reluctantly joins, and he soon realizes that he's not the only Black salesperson there. He's the only Black person in the entire company. So he goes through hell and back in order to make it to the top. And once there, he has status, money, power, but he says, you know what? I don't like being the token Black guy. So he hatches a plan to help other people of color infiltrate America's tech startup sales teams, redefining what it means to be a minority in the workplace. This book definitely, if you couldn't tell, touches on many things that are relevant to this moment that we're all living in right now. But it's also connected to the many moments in history that have come before today. I hope that you read it. I hope that you enjoy it. And if you want to order a copy, go to shoptyt.com. Thank you, be well, and happy 2021.
Breaking news with Brett Ehrlich. This is Brett Ehrlich with Breaking News with Brett Ehrlich. Bernie Sanders wants to break Wall Street, and he wants to break it real bad.
Here at the Young Turks, we do our best to bring you the most essential news stories of the day, but we can't cover everything in a 2-hour show. And for the rest, I recommend Ground News. Founded by a former NASA scientist, Ground News uses a revolutionary system that analyzes where the news is coming from and gives you complete transparency on the potential biases these sources may have. That way, you can read between the lines of media bias and break free from the corporate media agenda. In arming you with the context and transparency, you'll have everything you need to think critically about the news and build responsible media literacy for yourself and others. With Ground News, you're not just mindlessly consuming the media, you're part of a movement that is working to hold them accountable and get straight to the facts. Break through the filter bubbles, the propaganda, and the bias, and subscribe to Ground News today.
I don't care if you're Christian. In fact, I will fight for you to have your religious liberty and practice your Christianity. I believe in that. I don't believe in Christianity, which means that you do not get to dictate the way I live my life based on your religion. I don't care what the Bible says. You have every right in the world. All those women who identify with your religion have every right in the world to not get an abortion, to not take birth control, but they do not have the right to dictate my life and what I decide to do with my body. I don't care about your goddamn religion. I'm so tired of having nonstop conversations about what the Bible says. You live your life in the way that you interpret the Bible. Again, I don't care, but you don't get to take the Bible and tell me, well, the Bible says this in this chapter, in this verse. I don't care. I don't care, I don't believe in it, and I have the right, based on our Constitution, to not believe in it.
Welcome back to the show. You know I'm so glad you are here. Have you read the progress report, the TYT newsletter? If you haven't, subscribe now to TYT weekday morning newsletter, the progress report. You don't want to miss it. Go ahead and put that smartphone up there and get that Q code. Progressive news and inspiration every weekday. They have things in there laid out in ways that you will not read anywhere else. So go ahead and subscribe. And you know you can get Unbossed wherever you get your podcast. So not only join us here on YouTube, wherever you get your podcast. Join us on podcast as well. And then, as you know, the watch list follows Unbossed. So go ahead and join JR Jackson right after this. Don't even change the channel. Stay right where you are. Now on to my absolute favorite part, the comments. Our TYT members, Jenny, hello Jenny. It's amazing to me that these politicians can refuse to raise the minimum wage, but then say people should be able to take care of themselves. I'm with you on that, Jenny. You mean on the pennies the corporations are willing to pay because they are maximizing profits at the expense of their workers? They are so dumb. Jenny, I am in full agreement with you. On Twitch, Fidel Castor Oil. Hey, Fidel Castor Oil, I love that name. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage Joseph R. blowing up Democratic chances in 2024, the 46th POTUS. Woo, Fidel Castor Oil, that part right there, that was so good and so creative. Thank you for giving me that chuckle. He is blowing it up in fine fashion. On YouTube Super Chat, Gary, Jackson is a seriously insightful, young, intelligent brother with about 15,000 exclamation points. I do agree with that, Gary. He really is that. And you don't like my music, stand for prisoners' rights. I love this show. Oh, thank you. You don't like my music. Yeah, we want people to go in, pay their debt to society, and come out better and more vibrant than when they went in, so that they can get the second chance or the third chance in some cases to make their lives right. And those are the people around them. That is what we should be doing in this country. Hello, somebody on that. Oh my God, do I have a treat for you today? I am bringing in one of the world's premier experts on war and peace. I'm gonna throw that peace in there too. And this is none other than Norman Solomon. He is an American journalist, media critic, author, and activist. Norman Solomon is the National Director of Roots Action and Executive Director of the Institute for Public Accuracy. His next book, which is coming out, cannot wait, War Made Invisible: How America Hides the Human Toll of Its Military Machine. And that book will be published this year in June by the New Press. And he has written so many other books. Norman, it is so great. And we worked together on many projects. He was a delegate for Senator Bernie Sanders. I mean, he has done a presidential election. He's done so many wonderful things. And Norman, it is so good to have you here on the show with us today. How are you?
Well, given the way the world is, I feel very lucky. It's so good to be with you.
Yeah, it's great to be with you as well. And so glad that you are on the front line. And one of the, you being the co-founder and national director of Roots Action, which is an online organization, which now has upwards of 1.3 million online supporters. I mean, that is indeed a beautiful thing. You talk about organizing, and Roots Action is doing some really great work. So you all, if you want to know more about Roots Action, go to rootsaction.org. Sign up, join, help, and support this organization in their pursuit to create a more progressive, fair America. So great to have you here. So I want to jump right in this. You minced no words in your critique of the Iraq war and the comparisons to what is now happening in Ukraine and Russia, that whole thing. And you put out this tweet, you put out several, but this one caught my eye. Hashtag Iraq war, Iraq 20 years on. 20 years after the Iraq invasion, the lies continue. Don't expect the media to mention how Joe Biden and Tony Blinken sent us to war in 2003 or their hypocrisy today. And again, you spared no one in this. And in your article, you not only point out the role that various elected leaders played and continue to play in the war-making saga that we find ourselves in this country and in the world, you called out mainstream America as well. And this is what you wrote: vast quantities of lies from top US government officials led us to the Iraq invasion, now marking its 20th anniversary. The same media outlets that eagerly boosted those lies are offering retrospectives. Don't expect them to shed light on the most difficult truths, including their own complicity in pushing for war. What propelled the United States to start the war on Iraq in March of 2003 were dynamics of media and politics that are still very much with us today. I mean, you came hard at them. So, Norman, talk to us about why it is so important to be just that crystal clear about what happened 20 years ago and what is happening right now.
Well, I think about something George Orwell wrote. He said, those who control the past control the future. Those who control the present control the past. You know, history is not over, and the way in which in the last few days, really, the news media have remembered for us what happened 20 years ago is really a continuum of the buildup that we got, the lies, deceptions, distortions that led into the war on Iraq in the first place. So we have the same media outlets that parroted stuff coming from the George W. Bush administration to smooth the path for the carnage. And now those are the same media outlets that for 20 years have been telling us what the war means and downplaying the suffering of Iraqi people during that time. And now 20 years later, the anniversary time, we're being told what it all adds up to. And this is the kind of continuum, you know, there are a lot of the same individual journalists who were part of the stampede to war, virtually all the same mainstream media institutions that cheerled to the war. And now they're telling us, well, it was a mistake, we didn't know, so on and so forth. And so we have, I think, an opportunity, a responsibility to find different realities in history, which is to say history. You know, we're told we're revising history. No, we're trying to bring history to the fore. It's been buried by these same corporate media outlets that thrive from war. I mean, let's face it, the military-industrial complex and corporate media, they are intermeshed. They are kissing cousins. They are embracing each other. They are getting rich off each other. A lot of the CEOs are becoming incredibly wealthy while they are part of this march to war. And one other aspect that you mentioned, the terrible war on Ukraine by Russia really should be a jolt to us. The idea that any war is good is like complete comfortable nonsense. And I think it's important to recognize that the horrors that are being inflicted on Ukraine by Russia do not justify the deadly hypocrisy of Washington in the last 20 years with its own so-called war on terror. And likewise, the hypocrisies that are so deadly, as I say, coming out of Washington do not in any way justify what Russia is doing.
Yeah, not at all, Norman. And as you said, the incredible suffering. And there were very few people 20 years ago, but there were a few who sounded the alarm to let this country know that what they were doing was wrong. There were very few courageous people, as you and I have talked about over the years, that were even in Congress. I think it was Congresswoman Barbara Lee. Is that right? The only one that voted against that, and she caught a lot of flack for it. I also remember when the Dixie Chicks had made a comment, you know, I think it was at one of their concerts or at an interview or something, and how they were shunned. I mean, other people knew what was happening, but if you did not walk that fine line, people made an example of you for speaking up and speaking out, for being really true to understanding that war cannot get us peace, that there has to be a point by which diplomacy takes hold. And that is the same thing happening here. But these leaders are controlled and they're owned by the owner donors, which part of them are in the war industry. And that is why we continue to have to face these things to this very day. And Norman, you brought up President Bush. Let's hear him in his own words 20 years ago.
My fellow citizens, at this hour, American and coalition forces are in the early stages of military operations to disarm Iraq, to free its people, and to defend the world from grave danger. On my orders, coalition forces have begun striking selected targets of military importance to undermine Saddam Hussein's ability to wage war.
This was very eerie, Norman. Put Norman up next to me, please. This was very eerie to, hear this 20 years later, this president say this. And there was clearly a point where they knew good and well, as my grandmother would say, they knew good and well that Iraq had no weapons of mass destruction, but they persisted anyway. I mean, Norman, what in your opinion is behind this type of madness? Certainly, President Bush is not the only one that that pushes, that pushed for war and other skirmishes, and I'm using that term very lightly, that happen all over the country on a regular basis. What is it with this madness?
Well, it is madness. Martin Luther King Jr. called it the madness of militarism. Hearing and seeing Bush there a few seconds ago, it really gave me chills. And I thought immediately of a song that Phil Oakes, the great anti-war artist, really a cultural descendant of Woody Guthrie, sang. He said, "It's always the old who lead us to war. It's always the young who fall." And that is like an archetype. So that's sort of one way, I think, to respond to that profound question you raise. Another is that it is so profitable. These war industries are just making a killing, literally and figuratively. And every year, the budget of the Pentagon, and I don't call it a defense budget, it is a military budget. It is going through the roof. When Biden has asked for X dollars, more than 800 billion with a B dollars every year. Oh, that's not enough for the Senate and the House. They keep raising the amount, and then Biden signs it, very happy, as it happens around Christmas time, the Prince of Peace. And there we are, we have the president saying how wonderful in late December every year we can sign up for more military spending.
It is insane, Norman. It is madness. It is insanity. I think the budget is 858 billion right now, give or take a few billion. And this president is asking for even more. I think up to $886 billion. It is a stain on this country. We have more war power, or excuse me, we spend more money on that type of thing than like 9 or 10 countries combined. And most of those countries in that list, countries that you and I could name, are our allies to boot. The majority in that list are our allies. So it really absolutely makes no sense. But no, there's something in the American psyche when it comes to the bravado of saying we have a strong defense. I mean, we would continue to have we have a strong defense. Right? Evil is in the world, we get that. But why do we continue to pile onto that budget? Meanwhile, and in a very bipartisan way, but meanwhile, back in the hoods where people are misunderstood, whether they're rural, urban, or suburban hoods, we can't come together as a nation to feed our children. We can't expand the child tax credit. We can't increase the federal minimum wage. We can't pass the PRO Act. I mean, what is it about the American psyche, Norman, where the American people sit back and allow this kind of foolishness and mayhem in our name?
Big part of the problem is the media flow, that it is an overwhelming deluge, an avalanche, a waterfall that overwhelms people's psyche so often with disinformation, misinformation, and failure to speak. Aldous Huxley said that lies are powerful, but even more powerful is silence about truth. And we have these deafening instances of silence where what isn't said is so powerful and so profoundly distorting. So we don't hear the cries of people underneath the US bombs. And I was in Afghanistan, I met a 7-year-old girl who had lost her arm, courtesy of US taxpayers, because of what fell on her house before dawn. Yes, we paid for it, and they paid. Those people I met and so many others have paid for it in very terrible ways. It's so profitable. And I do think again of something Dr. King said. He called a demonic suction tube, was taking billions of dollars from healthcare, education, housing in this country to bomb people overseas.
Yeah, and you and my dear Benjamin from Cold Pink, she often puts that question out there that if we pretended that it was us instead of them, how would we feel if those were our children, our mothers, our fathers, our aunts, our uncles, our grandparents? How would we feel? And there is a scripture in the Christian Bible that says something like, what does it profit a man to gain the whole world but to lose his soul? And I bring that up in terms of what you said about the profit. What does it profit these industries that if we don't have a world, because we certainly cannot afford a WW3, what does it profit them if we lose the world? I mean, that's why we cannot describe this other than insanity. This is the only way. And Omar, I want to end with one of the greatest unionists and civil rights leaders of the 20th century. You probably know who I'm talking about. His quote about war. Let's put that quote up and put Norman and myself up side by side with the quote: "Make wars unprofitable and you make them impossible." That is coming from the great leader of the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters, Asa Philip Randolph. Norman, in our final minute here, what are your thoughts about what Asa Philip Randolph had to say? Make wars unprofitable and you make them impossible.
He was about organizing. And I think of him as one of the great leaders who organized the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom.
Yes.
And he pushed it to the president. Folks who organized didn't ask, they demanded. And here in 2023, we have to keep doing that because it's our world and it's the world of the next generations. And you used such a key word a couple of minutes ago. This is about diplomacy. But what's coming out of this administration, as before, is the opposite of diplomacy. It is bellicosity and it is more and more war.
Yeah, and war cannot undo, war can't make things right. It just doesn't. It causes chaos and mayhem everywhere it goes, no matter what. And if you don't have a plan for diplomacy, there is no plan at all.
That's right.
Norman, we cannot wait. Would love to have you back on the show. Your book is coming out. We want people to make sure they get your book. Is coming out in June of 2023. You don't want to miss it. And Norman, again, thank you and your members for all that you do to push for freedom and justice. And we are absolutely going to have you back again. You all support Roots Action. Go to rootaction.org, baby, and support this great work. Well, it is our time for today. So glad that you were able to join us. Beloveds, what I want you to do, I want you to keep the faith always. I know it can be hard, but I want you to keep that faith. And I need you to marry that faith with fight. Until next time.